In year 20,732, Galactic Council humiliated Earth. So humans went to war in the year 20,732. Earth was part of a vast intergalactic community known as the Galactic Council. The Council consisted of many different alien species, each more advanced than Earth in terms of technology, culture, and military power. For centuries, Earth had been considered a backwater, a planet with little influence or value compared to the mighty empires that dominated the stars. Humans, for the most part, had accepted their place in the galaxy, one of humility, where they could contribute but not lead. At the annual Galactic Council Summit, representatives from all the powerful species gathered to discuss the future of the galaxy, share knowledge, and make important decisions. But when it came time for Earth to speak, it was clear that no one had any respect for them. Earth's request for advanced defense technology, something that could protect humanity from growing threats in the galaxy, was dismissed. The other species, particularly the Zorvans, an arrogant and technologically superior race, mocked the humans openly. The leader of Earth's delegation, Ambassador Michael Grant, stood before the council, his expression a mixture of disbelief and frustration. He had worked tirelessly for months to gather the necessary support for the request, believing that the Earth had earned the right to be taken seriously. But now, standing there, surrounded by alien species who barely glanced in his direction, he could feel the sting of humiliation. The Zorvans, who had long held a dominant position in the council, were the first to speak. Their representative, High Commander Thalrex, a tall alien with smooth, silver-blue skin, looked at Ambassador Grant with a mix of amusement and disdain. "We, the Zorvans, have made it clear for centuries that Earth has not yet reached a stage where it can be trusted with advanced technologies," Thalrex said, his voice cold and sharp. "Your request is generous, but your species is simply not ready for such responsibilities. You may continue to rely on us for your protection, but only as long as we deem it necessary." The council erupted into laughter. The room buzzed with mocking whispers and arrogant smirks. Grant's heart sank. He had expected some pushback, but this level of disrespect was unimaginable. The Zorvans had always been dismissive of humanity, but now it was clear Earth would never be given the respect it deserved. This was not just about the technology, it was about the dignity of an entire species. The humiliation did not end with words. As the session continued, the council representatives from other species joined in, offering generous alternatives to Earth's request, small, ineffective upgrades that barely scratched the surface of what Earth needed to defend itself. They were laughable, but the worst part was that they were presented as if they were doing Earth a favor. No one saw the value of humanity. As the summit drew to a close, Ambassador Grant was called aside by a few members of Earth's delegation. There was little need for words. The look on their faces said it all. The humans had been humiliated. Earth had been put in its place, and it was not a place of power, respect, or even consideration. It was a place of insignificance. When Grant returned to his office, his hands were shaking. He stared out the window of the high-rise building, watching the city of New York bustling below. The lights of the city, the tall skyscrapers, the thousands of people going about their lives, it all seemed so small compared to the galaxy. Humanity had always been proud of its achievements, but now that pride felt hollow. The world outside had shown them just how little they mattered. As the days passed, the humiliation of the summit lingered. News outlets across Earth reported the event, many of them glossing over the details. Some tried to sugarcoat it, calling it a misunderstanding or a cultural difference. But to those who had watched the summit unfold, it was clear that the rest of the galaxy saw Earth as little more than a second-class species, and for many that truth hit hard. In the military, the reaction was different. General Olivia Stone, a decorated officer who had spent years fighting in distant colonies, felt the sting of the summit's outcome as deeply as anyone. She had always believed in humanity's potential, but seeing Earth treated like a joke by the rest of the galaxy sparked something in her. It wasn't just about defense technology or military might anymore. This was about respect. Humanity was being told that it was not worthy of the same status as the other species. That was a challenge she could not ignore. Stone called a secret meeting with her closest officers, and together they began to discuss what needed to be done. If Earth was to survive in the galaxy, it would need more than just new technology. It needed a revolution, not just in terms of weaponry, but in spirit. "We've been humiliated, but we won't stay down," General Stone said as she addressed the group. Her voice was calm but filled with conviction. "We have technology, we have intelligence, and most importantly, we have the one thing the rest of them don't, our will to fight." Her officers, who had heard the whispers of dissent among their own ranks, nodded in agreement. They had been trained to fight, to protect, to survive. But now it was clear that they needed to do more than just defend Earth. They needed to prove that humanity would no longer be the galaxy's punching bag. And to do that, they would need to go on the offensive. The first steps were taken in secret. A small group of human scientists, working with the military, began developing new technologies. These weren't just the basic defense systems that Earth had been denied at the Council meeting. These were weapons that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. The scientists knew that if they could develop something truly revolutionary, it would give Earth a fighting chance. As the weeks passed, the project grew. General Stone worked tirelessly, recruiting top officers, strategists, and even civilians who had the skills to contribute. The mood among the military changed. There was no longer just anger at the Galactic Council's treatment of Earth. There was a fire, a hunger for vengeance and recognition. Grant, the ambassador who had once hoped for diplomacy, now found himself working alongside Stone. They had both been crushed by the summit, but together they knew that Earth's future lay in their hands. The work would be dangerous and the risks were high, but they had no choice. The rest of the galaxy had shown them no mercy, so it was time for humanity to show the galaxy exactly what it was capable of. But the world still didn't know what was coming. The people of Earth went about their lives, unaware of the preparations being made behind the scenes. They went to work, to school, to dinner, while above them, far beyond the reaches of their sight, a storm was brewing, a storm that would shake the galaxy to its core. Humanity, once dismissed and ridiculed, would rise up and demand the respect it had been denied for so long. And they would do it on their own terms. The war for Earth's dignity had begun. The days after the summit were a blur of anger, frustration, and quiet determination. Earth's leaders knew they couldn't let the incident go unnoticed, but they also understood that open conflict with the Galactic Council could lead to disaster. Still, within certain circles, there was a growing realization that diplomacy had failed, and Earth's place in the galaxy had been forever changed by that moment of humiliation. General Olivia Stone, now leading a secret initiative within the military, began organizing the people who could make a difference. There was a fire in her eyes that few had seen before. She had always been a soldier who respected orders, but now the situation was different. The Council had drawn a line, and humanity had been pushed into a corner. She couldn't back down. In a secure underground facility, hidden from the eyes of the Galactic Council, the plan was beginning to take shape. General Stone had assembled a small but powerful team of scientists, engineers, and military strategists. Each person had a specific skill that would contribute to the effort. Their mission was clear: to build something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that would make the rest of the Council take humanity seriously. Among them was Dr. Samuel Hayes, a brilliant but somewhat eccentric scientist. He had spent years working on theoretical physics and energy weapons, but when the Council had denied Earth's request for technology, he knew it was time to turn his ideas into something tangible. In the past, Earth's technology had always lagged behind. But now, with no one willing to help, it was time to leap ahead. Hayes was working on a prototype of a new energy weapon, one that could disrupt the shields of even the most advanced alien ships. The concept was untested, but it was their only hope. For the first time, Earth was putting its faith not in the approval of the Council, but in its own ingenuity and determination. Stone and her team spent weeks working in secrecy, designing weapons, ships, and defensive systems that would give humanity a fighting chance. They knew that the technology they had been denied was now within their reach if they could perfect it. The work was grueling, but the team's resolve was unwavering. Every day, new breakthroughs brought them closer to their goal. As the weapons technology began to take shape, Stone knew that their next step was crucial. They needed to test their new weapons in a real-world scenario, something that would prove to the rest of the galaxy that humanity was no longer a weakling. Earth's military had always been formidable in terms of numbers and bravery, but without the advanced technology of the other species, they had been at a disadvantage. General Stone believed that it was time for that to change. One day, after weeks of secret work, Dr. Hayes made a breakthrough. His new energy weapon was ready for testing. The weapon was designed to fire a beam of concentrated energy that could penetrate the advanced shields of the Zorvan warships. The problem had always been how to concentrate such immense energy into a small, manageable form, but Hayes had done it. The prototype was ready. "We need a test subject," Hayes said, looking at Stone with a sense of urgency. "Something small, not too risky, but enough to prove that it works. We need to hit something that can fight back." Stone thought for a moment. She knew that the Zorvans had established a new communications relay station on the outskirts of Earth's solar system. The station was unprotected, but it was also a vital link in the Zorvans' operations. If they could destroy it, they would send a message. It was a risky plan, but Stone had no choice. She gathered her top officers and explained the situation. The team would launch a small attack to test the weapon, hitting the communications station and seeing how the new weapon performed. If it worked, they would move on to larger targets. If not, they would be back to the drawing board. The team prepared the mission, taking every precaution. The new energy weapon would be mounted on one of Earth's stealth ships, which had been designed to avoid detection by the Zorvans. The mission was simple: infiltrate the communications relay, fire the weapon, and return before the Zorvans even realized what had happened. As they launched from Earth, the weight of the mission hung heavy. Stone's mind raced with possibilities. If the weapon failed, it would set them back months. If it succeeded, they would have the upper hand, at least for a while. Either way, humanity's future was at stake. The journey to the relay station was long, and the tension aboard the ship was palpable. Every crew member knew the importance of this mission. They were not just testing a weapon. They were proving to the galaxy that Earth was capable of much more than anyone had thought. Finally, after hours of traveling, the relay station came into view. It was a large, imposing structure, orbiting a small, uninhabited moon. It wasn't heavily defended, but the Zorvans were known to have advanced sensor systems that could detect ships even from great distances. "We're in position," said Lieutenant Harris, the ship's pilot. "Stealth systems are holding, but we don't have much time," Stone nodded. "Fire the weapon when we're within range. We need to make sure we hit the target with full power." The weapon was aimed, and the countdown began. As the ship drifted closer to the station, the crew held their breath. The success of the mission would depend on a single shot. Firing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The weapon discharged a brilliant beam of concentrated energy. For a moment, everything went quiet. The beam struck the relay station, and the entire structure erupted in a flash of light. The force of the blast sent shockwaves through the surrounding space, and the station was obliterated in an instant. "It worked," Dr. Hayes whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "It actually worked." The crew erupted in cheers, but Stone remained focused. The mission was a success, but this was only the beginning. The Zorvans would know that Earth had attacked their communication network, and they would come looking for revenge. Stone didn't have much time to celebrate. There was still a war to fight, and the real battle was just starting. As the stealth ship made its way back to Earth, the team's victory felt bittersweet. They had proven that humanity could fight back, but they had also made themselves a target. The Zorvans would not forgive this attack, and Earth would never be the same again. Stone knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger, but she was ready. For the first time, humanity had stood up for itself. They had taken the first step toward earning the respect they deserved. And they wouldn't stop until the galaxy knew that Earth would never again be treated as insignificant. The war had just begun. After the success of their first mission, the atmosphere among Earth's military changed. The successful strike on the Zorvan relay station was a clear message to the galaxy. Earth would no longer accept being treated as weak. General Olivia Stone and her team knew that this victory, though significant, was just the beginning. The Zorvans would retaliate, and the other members of the Galactic Council would no longer ignore humanity's growing power. Back on Earth, the news of the successful mission spread quickly. The media, which had once dismissed the military as outdated and ineffective, now painted them as heroes. People from all corners of Earth, whether in the bustling cities or the quiet rural villages, began to feel a sense of unity and pride. For the first time in generations, humanity had done something the galaxy could not ignore. It was no longer about defending their planet. It was about taking a stand for their place in the stars. As Earth celebrated its small but important victory, General Stone gathered her team once more. She knew that the next phase of their plan would be even more dangerous. They had struck the Zorvans, but their response was inevitable. The Zorvans had vast resources, advanced fleets, and alliances with the most powerful species in the galaxy. Now that Earth had drawn blood, they would come for vengeance. "We've made our move," Stone said as she stood before her officers, all of them now fully committed to the cause. "The Zorvans will retaliate, but we're not backing down. We've got the technology now, and we've got the heart of our people. But we need to be prepared for what's coming. The real fight is just beginning." The officers nodded in agreement. They had all felt the sting of the Council's disregard, and now they had the opportunity to prove themselves. But as the days went by, the questions grew. Would humanity's new weapons be enough to face the full might of the Zorvan Empire? Could they hold their ground against the full power of the Galactic Council? For the first time in centuries, Earth had become the underdog in a fight that was bigger than anyone had ever imagined. But one thing was certain: humanity would fight back, no matter the cost. In the weeks following the raid, General Stone's secret force began to grow. The first attack had drawn the attention of other species. Many of them were curious about humanity's new weapons, wondering if Earth had finally evolved into something more than a backwater planet. Some were eager to see what the humans would do next, while others were fearful. Would the human rebellion spread? Would they become a threat to the balance of power in the galaxy? While Earth's military force continued its preparations, the political leaders on Earth were still working in the shadows. Ambassador Michael Grant, who had been humiliated at the Galactic Council summit, was now at the forefront of a diplomatic campaign. He worked tirelessly, reaching out to the smaller, less powerful species who had been ignored by the Council. These species, many of whom had long been oppressed or ignored by the larger empires, saw an opportunity in humanity's rise. They, too, wanted to be respected, to be heard. Grant knew that if Earth was to survive this war, they would need allies. The larger, more powerful species would never ally with humanity willingly, but the smaller races, those on the fringes of the Council, might be open to negotiations. They had nothing to lose by joining Earth in a rebellion. In fact, it was their chance for freedom. The first signs of an alliance began to form. Several small, previously unnoticed species sent ambassadors to Earth, asking for talks. Grant met with them secretly, negotiating terms of cooperation. They offered their support in exchange for protection, technology, and a voice in the galaxy. In return, Earth promised to help them secure their own freedom from the larger empires. It was a fragile alliance, but it was a start. Meanwhile, the Zorvans were not idle. In response to the destruction of their communications station, they launched a full-scale military campaign to crush humanity's growing resistance. Their fleets, once thought invincible, were now mobilizing toward Earth's solar system. The Zorvans weren't just angry, they were terrified. The humans had proven that they could strike back, and the Zorvans knew that a rebellion could spread like wildfire if not stopped. The Zorvan High Command issued a directive to all Galactic Council forces: crush the humans. If they were allowed to grow stronger, the entire Council could be at risk. Earth had to be put in its place, once and for all. General Stone's forces, now bolstered by their new allies, prepared for the inevitable clash. They knew the Zorvans would come with everything they had: advanced warships, overwhelming firepower, and armies of elite soldiers. But humanity had something the Zorvans didn't: the will to fight for survival, the will to prove that they belonged, the will to show that Earth was not just a second-rate planet anymore. The first signs of the Zorvan fleet appeared on Earth's radar. The sheer size of their forces was overwhelming. Ships as large as cities, equipped with weapons capable of destroying entire planets, headed straight for Earth. It was a show of force meant to intimidate, to make the humans quake in fear. But General Stone didn't flinch. She knew what was coming, and she was ready. The battle would be brutal. The human fleet, smaller but faster and more agile, engaged the Zorvans in a series of skirmishes. The energy weapons developed by Dr. Hayes worked perfectly, disabling the Zorvan ships, shields, and allowing the humans to strike at their vulnerable points. But the Zorvans were not easy opponents. Their tactics were ruthless, and their ships were equipped with advanced countermeasures that put Earth's fleet at a disadvantage. For hours, The battle raged across Earth's atmosphere and beyond, with both sides taking heavy losses. The human fleet, though outnumbered, fought with everything they had. They used their superior knowledge of Earth's terrain and their quick, adaptive tactics to outmaneuver the Zorvans at every turn. But the Zorvans were relentless, and it seemed as though the battle might tip in their favor. Then, in the midst of the chaos, General Stone ordered the final phase of the attack. She had been saving their most powerful weapon for this moment, a new experimental missile that could disable an entire fleet's power systems in a single strike. If it worked, it could turn the tide of the battle. If it failed, Earth's forces would be doomed. Stone watched from the command center as the missile launched, streaking toward the Zorvan flagship. The tension was unbearable. The missile reached its target, and for a brief moment there was silence. Then, a massive explosion lit up the sky. The Zorvan flagship's power systems collapsed, and with it the rest of their fleet faltered. The humans had won. The Zorvans, stunned by the loss, began to retreat, but Stone knew this victory would not end the war. The Zorvans would regroup and the other council members would come for them. But for now, Earth had proven its strength. Humanity had sent a clear message. They would not go down quietly, and they would fight for their place in the galaxy no matter the cost. As the dust settled and Earth's fleet regrouped, General Stone looked out at the stars. The war was far from over, but for the first time in history, humanity had stood up to the galaxy. And they had shown that when pushed to the edge, they would fight back with everything they had. The victory over the Zorvans had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Humanity, once dismissed and mocked by the other species of the Galactic Council, had struck back with a force that no one had anticipated. General Olivia Stone stood at the helm of Earth's defense, but even she knew that this was just the beginning. The battle had been a victory, but the war was far from over. In the aftermath of their triumph, Earth's military was emboldened. Earth's allies, the smaller oppressed species of the galaxy, saw the victory as a turning point. They had been waiting for someone to stand up to the mighty Zorvans, and now they saw humanity as the key to their own freedom. One by one, these species began sending more forces to join Earth's side. The coalition grew, and with it, Earth's hopes for a new future. General Stone spent sleepless nights in the command center, reviewing strategies and rallying her forces. She knew that the Zorvans would not give up easily. They had suffered a humiliating defeat, and their pride would push them to retaliate with everything they had. But she also knew that the human spirit could not be broken. They had proven that when pushed to the edge, they could rise up and fight for their survival. Meanwhile, Ambassador Michael Grant worked tirelessly in the background, securing alliances with more species, including the Eterians, a peaceful race known for their advanced technology. They had been neutral in the Council for years, but saw in humanity's courage a glimmer of hope for their own future. The Eterians offered Earth new technological advancements, which would prove vital in the war ahead. As Earth's coalition grew stronger, so did the alien forces that opposed them. The Zorvans began mobilizing an even larger fleet, and their allies in the Galactic Council, sensing the threat to their established order, started to rally behind them. The war was becoming a true battle for the future of the galaxy. Would humanity continue to fight, or would they be crushed under the weight of the Empire's might? Days passed, and the first major counteroffensive from the Zorvans arrived. The attack came quickly and decisively. A fleet of Zorvan warships, their hulls gleaming under the cold stars, appeared on the outer edges of Earth's solar system. They had come to crush humanity's resistance once and for all. They were bringing everything they had. General Stone's heart pounded as the alert came through. The Zorvans had launched a full-scale attack. The fleet was massive, far larger than anything humanity had ever seen before. The remaining Zorvan ships, now reinforced with new allies, were ready to obliterate Earth. There was no time for hesitation. Stone immediately called a meeting with her top officers. The stakes were higher than ever before. Earth's forces, though bolstered by their new allies, were still outnumbered, but Stone refused to back down. She had fought too long and too hard to let Earth fall now. "We cannot let them take this from us," General Stone said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We've come too far. We know the enemy's tactics, and we've learned from every battle. We will use everything we have. It's time for humanity to make its final stand." The officers nodded. There was no fear in their eyes. They had seen the horrors of the Zorvan war machine firsthand, but they had also seen what humanity was capable of. The fight was not just for Earth's survival, it was for their dignity, their place in the galaxy, and they would fight for it until the last breath. The battle unfolded over the course of several days. The Zorvan fleet attacked in waves, overwhelming Earth's defenses at first. They used their superior numbers to push through the outer defense stations, and soon, the Zorvans were within striking distance of Earth itself. But humanity wasn't done yet. The Earth fleet, though smaller, was fast and agile, using guerrilla tactics to hit the Zorvans where they were weakest. They struck quickly, and then disappeared into the depths of space before the Zorvans could regroup. The new energy weapons, which had been tested in previous skirmishes, were now deployed in full force, disabling enemy ships and forcing the Zorvans to adapt to humanity's tactics. The first major victory for humanity came when Earth's forces managed to destroy a key Zorvan command ship, crippling their ability to coordinate their attacks. The strike was a blow to the Zorvans, but it was also a sign to the galaxy. Earth was not backing down. The battle was hard-fought, and as the days passed, both sides suffered heavy losses. But Stone's leadership and the ingenuity of Earth's scientists turned the tide. Slowly but surely, the Zorvans began to retreat. Their fleet was battered, their morale shattered. The fight was no longer about overwhelming force. It was about resilience, about fighting for something more than just victory. But General Stone knew the Zorvans wouldn't stop until they were certain humanity was destroyed. They had suffered a blow, but their pride and their power would drive them to strike again, harder than ever before. Stone had to make sure that Earth's fleet was ready for the next wave, whatever it might bring. As the battle raged on, Ambassador Grant continued his diplomatic work, keeping Earth's allies together and ensuring that their support didn't waver. But even as the humans fought to hold the line, they knew that the Zorvans were not done. The war was no longer just about Earth's survival. It was about securing a future for every species that had ever been overlooked by the Council. In the final days of the battle, with Earth's fleet nearly worn down, a signal arrived from the Eterians. They had finished their work on the new technology, and they were ready to share it with Earth. The Eterian ships arrived just as the last of the Zorvan forces were about to launch a final assault on Earth's capital. The Eterians' advanced weapons and shields tipped the balance in humanity's favor. With the help of their allies, Earth was able to push the Zorvans back, forcing them to retreat from Earth's system. The battle was over, but the war was not yet won. The Zorvans would regroup, and the Galactic Council would have to decide whether to stand with the oppressors or recognize humanity's newfound strength. General Stone stood in the command center, looking at the war-torn space around her. The fight had been brutal, but humanity had survived. They had proven that they could face the might of the galaxy and come out on top. Earth had not just defended itself, it had shown the galaxy what it meant to stand up for what was right. "The battle is over," Stone said quietly to herself, her voice filled with both exhaustion and pride. But the war is far from finished. As the Zorvan fleet retreated, a new chapter in the galaxy's history began. The story of Earth's struggle for respect and dignity was far from over. And humanity would continue to fight for its place in the stars, for its allies, and for the future of every oppressed species in the galaxy. The battle for Earth was far from over, but a turning point had arrived. Humanity had fought back against the Zorvans with a strength no one had thought possible. Earth had shown the galaxy that it would not be bullied or ignored any longer. General Olivia Stone stood at the command center, looking out into space, knowing the war was far from over but filled with an unwavering resolve. The Zorvans had been forced to retreat, but their defeat was not the end of the conflict. Earth's forces had dealt a significant blow, but the Zorvans were still a powerful empire, and they would come back. The question was not if they would strike again, but when. General Stone's team continued to rebuild their fleet, each day strengthening their defenses and strategies. Their weapons, developed in secrecy over the past months, had proven effective against the Zorvans, but it was clear that humanity's survival relied not just on technology, but on their ability to outthink their enemies. The Zorvans would adapt, and Earth would have to stay one step ahead. The diplomatic efforts led by Ambassador Michael Grant had also paid off. Earth's new alliances were growing stronger, and more species were now looking to humanity as a symbol of resistance. The oppressed races of the galaxy, who had long suffered under the rule of the more powerful empires, saw Earth as their hope for freedom. The Eterians, once neutral, had pledged their full support. Even the once ignored Cloravians, a peaceful and technologically advanced race, had offered their aid. But it wasn't just about Earth and its allies anymore. The war had spread throughout the galaxy, with other species rising up against the Council's dominance. It was a galactic uprising, fueled by the fire of those who had been suppressed for far too long. Earth had become the spark that ignited the fire of revolution. The Zorvans, realizing they were facing an unprecedented challenge, began to rally their forces. They called upon the might of the Galactic Council, hoping to crush Earth and its allies once and for all. The Council had no intention of letting a rebellious species rise against them, and they sent fleets from every corner of the galaxy to destroy the human threat. They thought they could overwhelm Earth, but they underestimated humanity's drive. General Stone knew that Earth would have to make a final stand, not just for their survival, but for the future of every species that longed for freedom. She began preparing for the most dangerous mission yet, a final assault on the heart of the Zorvan Empire. If Earth could strike at the core of the Zorvan war machine, they could break the Empire's grip on the galaxy. It was a gamble, but it was the only chance humanity had. Days before the final battle, Stone and her officers gathered in the war room. The walls were lined with maps, star charts, and digital displays showing the movements of Zorvan forces. Stone addressed her team, her voice steady and determined. "This is it," she said. "The Zorvans are regrouping. They're sending everything they have, but we've learned their tactics. We've learned their weaknesses. We won't just defend Earth, we're going to strike at the heart of their empire. We take out their command centers, their fleets, and their leadership. If we do this right, we cripple their ability to fight back." The officers nodded in agreement, their faces grim but resolute. They knew the stakes. If they failed, the galaxy would fall back into the hands of the Zorvans. If they succeeded, humanity would secure its place as a force to be reckoned with. The plan was simple, yet dangerous. Earth's combined fleet, supported by their new allies, would infiltrate the Zorvan homeworld and launch a coordinated strike. The Zorvans had never expected humanity to be capable of such a move. General Stone would lead the charge, guiding Earth's forces into the heart of enemy territory. The Eterians would provide their advanced technology to disable the Zorvans' shields, while the Cloravians would assist with intelligence and strategic planning. The Zorvans would never see it coming. As the human and allied forces prepared for the assault, Ambassador Grant worked tirelessly to maintain diplomatic pressure on the remaining members of the Galactic Council. He knew that the Council would try to sabotage Earth's efforts, but he also understood that this was the moment to rally support for the growing rebellion. Grant's message was clear. The Zorvans were not the only force in the galaxy, and the time had come for the oppressed to stand together. The night before the final assault, General Stone stood alone on the command deck, looking out at the stars. The weight of the decision before her was heavy. She had led humanity through countless battles, but this was different. This would determine the future of the galaxy. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the faces of those who had sacrificed everything to get them to this point. She thought of the soldiers who had died in the earlier battles, of the families who had been torn apart by the war. She thought of Earth's people who had risen from the ashes of their humiliation to become something stronger, something more. "I won't let you down," she whispered to herself. The next morning, the attack began. The Allied fleet moved quickly, slipping past Zorvan patrols and avoiding detection with the help of the Eterians' stealth technology. The ships were equipped with the latest weapons and shields, and the crews were ready. Stone's fleet, smaller but more agile than the Zorvans, darted through the shadows of space, positioning themselves for the attack. The first strike came from the Eterian ships. Their advanced energy beams shot out, disabling key defense systems around the Zorvan homeworld. Earth's fleet followed closely behind, launching a series of missile strikes that hit the Zorvan command center. The explosions lit up the sky, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. For a moment, there was chaos. The Zorvans, reeling from the surprise attack, scrambled to regroup. But it was too late. Earth's forces had already infiltrated the heart of their empire. General Stone led the final charge, her flagship cutting through the heart of the Zorvan fleet. Her command center was filled with the sounds of battle. The hum of weapons charging, the roar of explosions, and the crackle of communication systems. Stone remained calm, issuing orders to her fleet as they pushed forward, breaking through Zorvan lines and reaching their final target. The Zorvan flagship, the symbol of their power, was within reach. Stone's heart raced as she ordered the final strike. The missile was launched, cutting through space at incredible speed. For a moment, everything seemed to slow down, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The missile struck the Zorvan flagship, and in a blinding flash of light, the ship erupted into a million pieces. The force of the explosion sent ripples through the battlefield. With the destruction of their flagship, the Zorvan fleet faltered. Without leadership, their forces began to retreat, their once-proud empire crumbling under the weight of humanity's defiance. The war was over. The Zorvans had been defeated. General Stone stood on the bridge of her ship, staring at the remnants of the Zorvan fleet as it retreated. Her heart was heavy with both victory and loss. Humanity had won, but at what cost? So many had given their lives to make this possible. As she looked out at the stars, Stone knew that the galaxy had changed. Humanity had fought for its place among the stars, and it had earned the respect it had long been denied. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in history, Earth was a power to be reckoned with. "We did it," she whispered.